What's up, Warriors, and welcome to another episode of the Mental Health Movement Podcast, Voice for the Voiceless. I am your host, Chris. Today, I have a very special guest for you. She has been in my journey of healing since day one, since before the Facebook group. She is currently a moderator in our Facebook group, and she is one of my dear friends who is all the way in Alaska. Tina, how are you?
I'm good.
So happy to have you here. And today we're going to be talking about Suicide Prevention Month. September is a very near and dear month to my heart because, as I've mentioned in previous podcasts, I'm not a victim. I am a survivor. And I'm proud of my journey, maybe not some of the decisions, but I'm proud of where I am now. Proud that I can hold this platform and have people like you on this podcast. So thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome.
So before we get started, I just wanted to kind of give like an announcement on certain days throughout the month for September. So it just passed. August 31st was National Overdose Awareness Day. And now the month of September is National Recovery Month. So if you have somebody who has addiction problems or struggles, reach out to them, man. Like, I know how hard it is to have addicts in your life, whether it's family, whether it's friends. And I couldn't stress enough to be there for them the best you can. I know it's hard. And then, of course, like I said, National Suicide Prevention Month, which is why we're here today. So today we're going to do an interview style podcast. Tina has a blog, and we're going to be talking about, just her journey in mental health and what suicide prevention and all that means to her. So let's get started with the first question. So when you look at the impact of this month has had on the mental health community, it's created a lot of awareness all over social media and nonprofit organizations. What does this month mean to you in terms of mental health?
One of the primary things that that I love about it is the word prevention is in everything. That it's not necessarily focusing on what could happen, but helping it not happen. And that I really appreciate that there's not one steadfast cure for all. If, suicide prevention, you just do this is good. It doesn't work that way. Everybody's history is different. Everybody's trauma is different. Everybody's coping is different. So I really appreciate when agencies and resources are multiple because it allows people to find whatever resource works for them and have options. So as far as social media goes, it's one of the positives of social media for me. It opens up conversations, for example, what we're doing. But also it allows people to share stories in their own way, in their own words, with their own limits. And I really, really enjoy that a lot of the mental health conversations now involve people, I don't want to say of power, but of notoriety, famous people. Which brings more attention to it's okay to get help or speak out. So I have a lot of things I do this month personally because it's important to me.
Absolutely. And, you touched on something that I feel is super important to always hear from everybody in this community, or just anybody who's not really familiar with the journey of mental health, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody's trauma is not the same. And I want to stress that message time and time again, because it's something that I feel social media is bad for is, oh, well, you got a broken leg. Well, I broke my arm, my back, and, like 20 other things. And it kind of makes that like competition for people. And it's everything but a competition. We're all going through this journey together, or we're all trying to find ourselves, because we're on borrowed time. Tomorrow isn't promised, and your trauma is valid. My trauma is valid. My next door neighbor's trauma is valid. It's not a competition. And like you were saying with social media, with people of notoriety and, just have their name out there for social media, it's incredible to see how many people are willing to be there for each other. And I'm just grateful that we're at this point in our life where we can openly talk about mental health. Because from when I was a kid in 2014, not 2014, like 2006, when I was struggling and I first started discovering I had those struggles, it wasn't okay to talk about that stuff. It was, oh, well, if you have these thoughts, you're going to be locked away and you're going to have to take all these pills. And fast forward to 2022, and we're in such a positive place, whether it's social media, music. It's, of course, there's still a little bit of a taint in music in terms of like ignorantly using language that isn't, I'm trying to think of the word, that doesn't like look out for people's feelings. You know what I mean? Like,
okay.
Yeah. Like, I'm not saying obviously to walk on eggshells when you're writing a song, but there's just certain ways to word certain things. Like, to me, jokes about suicide aren't funny. Jokes about taking your own life isn't funny, and that's just
My little, I guess, irritation is when it's referred to as crazy. Yeah, that's just, I don't like the word, and I don't like the word normal.
Right. Yeah.
Those two things is kind of like you're really doing, it's kind of judgment, and it's just kind of like it doesn't promote healing. It doesn't promote courage to share.
Exactly.
Or to do anything else. And courage is necessary in order to get yourself in a place where you can be okay with what's going on. I had in my teens, you were talking about when you were younger, I knew something was different with me, and I'm not going to give the year, but I knew something was, different and off with me quite young. And at 16, I remember being pulled into a room with a psychiatrist person. And he said, okay, what can we do to fix you so your family's not so screwed up? And I remember sitting there in a vulnerable age in my life thinking, if I didn't already feel bad enough, that did not help.
Yeah.
And I really just was kind of like, why would you assume that the one that's trying to get help should be labeled the problem? Okay. So I remember I immediately did what you call surface sharing with him. I never got into anything deep, never got really, but so much help because I didn't feel like he even acknowledged the reality of where I was.
Right.
So yeah, what you hear, how you speak to people, it is paramount to progress.
Language is so important. And that's something that I didn't recently discover, because I kind of in the back of my head already knew there are certain ways to talk to people, but that phrase, language matters, specifically stuck out to me, because the very first time I think I had counseling, I was in 6th grade. So I was about 13. Oh, no, maybe younger than that. I don't remember how old I was, but it was shortly after my parents divorced. And I was going through that, being 8 years old at one point, my parents divorced, to getting the tug of war treatment between my parents, and just basically trying to adjust to life without my parents being together. And I remember getting pulled into a guidance counselor's office, I think maybe once or twice. And I don't remember it having any significant effect on me, because, fast forward to 9th grade, I was still probably just as bad, if not worse, mentally. And it wasn't until 27 years old before I started actually finding resources for myself. So it's incredible to see where we have ended up all these years later, in terms of just speaking to each other and watching the language that we say to each other. It's incredible.
Yes.
So much self-awareness. Obviously, we have so much more to go, of course, but I think we're in a pretty good place in terms of where society is with mental health. So when I first created this podcast, trying to come up with the fitting name, and Voice for the Voiceless came to mind. What does that title mean to you? Because I know we kind of touched on that a little bit, and I kind of want to get your thoughts on it now.
The title means everything. And I'm going to tell you why, because it's like a two-part concept for me. One is Voice for the Voiceless is people who aren't heard. But more importantly, my personal experience has been I couldn't speak. So it's voiceless because you don't know what to say, how to say it, how to explain, how to ask for help. You know, and then there's the people who can feel voiceless because there's no one listening. And so I love the title of that because every guest is speaking for somebody who isn't able to yet or doesn't know how. And that is significant in people trying to find their voice, their strength, their words. It took me years to say anything other than I'm sad. I didn't understand angry. I didn't understand depressed. I didn't understand irritated. No, I'm just sad. And it was like sadness was the umbrella all the other feelings hid under.
Right.
And it took me forever to find a way to say that I'm something other than sad, or that you have made me feel blank. It's just, so the other thing the voiceless, the shared part of it is the importance that people need to understand that it is not, there's no instant fix. You know, healing is, you know, the little quote that says healing is not linear. Well, neither was your trauma. It wasn't a straight line. It wasn't, you know, it's everybody's journey is different. And it's important because one of the reasons I do what I do is that I hope that a note, a sentence, a chapter, or whatever of my story, somebody can take a piece of and write their own towards living successfully with mental illness. And that's why it's more important for me to speak than it is to be nervous or cautious or worried, because that kept me silent. And one of the most powerful quotes I ever heard from me was that silence gives power to shame. And you can't heal if you're quiet. You can't take what's in you out without speaking. You've got to get it out, and you just, you know, the important factors, make sure you're speaking to whoever is actually listening.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when people speak out, they're met with, people don't listen, people don't get it, people who are critical. So they don't see the value in trying again, but that just keep trying till you find somebody who will listen.
Right. Mm-hmm. You know, I wanted to make it a point to mention this on the podcast, but, you know, since we had the voiceless conversation, I just wanted to say, I remember when I first met you, and I know you were very like reserved, you know, to yourself. Like you said, you mm-hmm. had no voice. Mm-hmm. Fast forward almost 3 years. I have never met somebody who has progressed so much in their character and in their being than you have. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I think you are one of the most incredible human beings I've ever met. And the fact that you have been able to build yourself up to the point of speaking out and sharing your story, what little pieces you have so far, speaks volumes. And this podcast, being able to give you the platform to speak for those people who are at once in your position, is massive impact. You've had a great impact on my life. I just wanted to let you know that from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
And I'm really happy that out of everybody who could have jumped on this podcast with me for this specific topic, you were the first one on here, because your journey is incredible. You know, and it's crazy to share stories with people now with mental health because I couldn't have this conversation 4 or 5 years ago. I would have been completely to myself. And now we've managed to get over 1,500 people in a group, and you were there since day one. So again, thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
So let's talk about therapy a little bit.
Okay.
So how did you find the resources for yourself, and at what point did you feel comfortable to start looking for that help?
Well, first I'm going to say something about therapy, and then I'll share my journey. Therapy is not for everybody. Right. I really want to indicate that I am in support of anyone getting help in the way that works for them. Therapy just happened to work for me. I am in 2012 when my mental health recovery journey began. It began in a inpatient setting. I've been in therapy on and off since I think 16. But I was strongly encouraged by my family to go and just maybe get a look at things because of how I was doing and feeling and not doing. I left there referred to a therapist, and that was 10 years ago, and I have had one ever since. So I was referred to one. I was with her for 7 years, I believe. And then I kind of switched, maybe a little less. But the thing about therapists is I've had enough over my life that's really important to mention that if you try therapy and it doesn't work, try a different provider. I had a provider once that I went in and I would just start doing what I call emotional vomit, just blah, 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 about how I was feeling. And she would sit there on her little medicine ball thingy and just go, okay, all right. That's all I ever got out of her. And I just kind of felt like I could have talked to a wall and got that. That's not helpful.
Right.
And then I had to remember she's coming from her own place, and maybe that's just where she's at. And so we just amicably agreed, not a good fit. Can you refer me to somebody else? And the other thing that's important for somebody like me who's been in therapy for quite a while, when you get to a point in your life where you might enter therapy because, let's say, you can't stop crying, can't get off the couch, or some depression stuff. And 3 years later, that's not your issue right now. Things have changed, maybe other experiences. And maybe who you need to talk to about it needs to change too. And I've always been able to say, I think we've kind of reached all I can get out of you. No offense, no disrespect, but I kind of need to move in a different direction. And I do think that is pivotal in why I keep making progress, because different set of eyes have been on me, different set of ears have listened. And some of the best therapists I ever had called me on my crap. And I'd be like, well, I'm doing this, and I think that this is, and he would say something like, can you listen to how you worded that? Can you make sure you are saying, is that really what you do think of yourself? Like, he just shoved a mirror back in my face. And I remember early on, I was like, if I don't want to look at myself, I don't have to. And he's like, no, you don't, not at all. But when you're ready to make progress with that, let me know. Like, he always just kind of, was like, I'm here when you're ready. Yeah. And for 20 years, I think it was 20 years. I experienced something 20 years ago, and I had really I'm willing to process anything but that. Wasn't going to talk about it, not going to deal with it. And then something came up that kind of triggered it. And he was like, this is an opportunity, take it or leave it. And I ended up processing it. And it was like the best thing ever that changed. So I am way into therapy. I just want to be clear and specific that it's not like you look up somebody up and everything's great.
Right.
It is work. It is tiring. It is exhausting. But it is also can be uplifting. And um, you know, in that another good example, that takes us back to the language conversation. That's how I learned the words, because they would explain, well, this sounds like this, or have you thought about this? Or, you know, I remember in one session, we just got a thesaurus, because I'm like, I feel something. I don't know how to tell you what it is. And she just pulled out the thesaurus. She's like, let's figure it out. So yeah, being just figuring out on my own, I'm just not the person for that.
Right.
My mind can be my worst enemy. So I need somebody else with some tools to get in there.
You know, you touched on something that I kind of want to bring up. A really good friend of mine, Victoria, who has, you know, she's my age, she's 30, and she has gone through many therapists as well. And
okay.
When she just found her most recent one, you know, she was telling me, she's like, I just don't feel great because I've been through so many therapists, and you know, I just had not great experiences with almost all of them. And I told her, I said, listen, before you start any therapist, it's important to ask questions before you dig into therapy sessions. You know, you gotta, what kind of therapy do you do? You know, what do you cover in your therapy sessions? And I said, once you get past that first session, you immediately know if that person's good for you or not. You're not at fault for going through different therapists, because like you said, there's many eyes on you. There's been many ears listening to your stories. And when you finally find that fit, everything just starts clicking. You know,
yes.
Learning how to talk to people, learning what your triggers are, how to express what you're feeling to whatever small circle of people you have. And you learn so much about yourself that you didn't know was buried there. So you being able to stress that you've been through so many therapists is super important, because I just wanted to make a note to her that, you know, it's okay that you've gone through all these people. Everybody has their perfect match. You know, Jess was my perfect match. Your therapist was your perfect match, and you know, other people. So Victoria, whenever you do listen to this, I just wanted you to listen to that part specifically. I'm really glad that you brought that up. So thank you, Tina.
Absolutely.
So I'm a really big fan of your artistic abilities. Your positivity rocks, just the art that you've been able to share with me and give to me as gifts. Have you always done art with rocks, or was it something you taught yourself to help you cope in your healing journey?
I was introduced to art therapy at 16 when I was in inpatient treatment. I remember to this day, the first time I picked up a paintbrush, I painted some little clay statue, which I still have. But I remember thinking, what's the point? What's the big deal? Whatever. And on and off, I did therapy. I think I've always painted. I've always, every now and then, just grabbed a canvas and painted. There's an argument in my family because none of us have a clear memory of when I got into rocks. There's like, well, did you find a painted one and it was like struck a nerve? Or so I think I ran into somebody talking about something and they mentioned it, and I looked it up and was like, oh, I could do that. And then it became my new obsession. So right now, I try to paint every day. I don't try to paint a finished project every day. But I try to paint every day. When I can, I do photography. I do something creative. I can have days where the world is ugly.
Yeah.
My world in my mind, the world outside, social media, just, I can't find positivity or beauty. So the way I learned to deal with that was to create it myself. So when I feel bad, I might grab a camera, run down the street. Very scenic areas right down the street from my house. And I might just go find something to take a picture of and just capture a moment where something was pretty. It's the end of the summer here. And so all my summer photos are pretty much done. And I did 4,238 captured moments.
Wow. Just in the month of August?
No, just summer. Summer of,
okay. I was
yep,
like, oh my
months.
God.
Yeah, 3 months.
You got a little catching up to do.
Well, I spend the winter organizing and sorting and deleting, but in the summer, I'm just full steam ahead, just get as many pictures as you can. And when I can't paint or think of something or I'm not feeling something, I will just paint a background for later. A very valuable person to me who happens to be in the mental health movement group said something to me once that has never left my mind. I, at times in my life, have struggled with thoughts of self-harm. And they explained, when you want to pick up something that's harmful, pick up a paintbrush. And that has never left my mind, ever. So again, the point of the more people that talk, the more other people can do better.
Absolutely.
That had never occurred to me. And I can tell you, if I have to go 2 days without painting, I can feel it. I can feel it. And I'm like, I gotta do this. I gotta do something. And usually it's what would I need to see to feel better?
Right.
Do I need a quote? Do I need a picture? That's why I like to tattoo the rocks, because it's just a way to bring something black and white to life.
Absolutely.
So, and my daughter is the tattoo queen of ordering. She just walks around one day and she goes, oh, hey, mom, I got you some tattoos. Or, hey, mom, I got you some paintbrushes. So I don't know if I consider myself artistic, but I guess I'm creative.
You're artistic. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll say it. You're artistic as hell.
Okay. So that kind of blossomed into a lot of canvases, wood, even like kitchen tiles. I'll paint almost anything. And it's a way to get good in my face and bad out of my mind. Absolutely.
And you know, one of the positivity rocks that you gave me, I believe, is when we hit a certain number on the podcast. I remember you telling me that a semicolon formed on the back of it. And yes. I thought that was the coolest thing in the world. Give me 2 seconds. I have it right next to me. I'm going to grab it.
Okay, not a problem.
Literally 2 seconds. So this little nugget right here. Yes. It was a 900 member rock that you gave me. And basically it formed a semicolon, which for my listeners, if you in case don't know, it's a suicide awareness tattoo, basically saying that the author kept the story going, that I decided not to take my life and decided to keep going. So this is the awareness for it. Mm-hmm. So like I said, I'm a huge fan of your art. I love it. Thank you. Every time I see you post a rock or anytime I see you take a picture, it's like, I have such cool friends. But it's interesting that you brought up the self-harm paintbrush thing, because that's actually something that counselors teach people who are like big on self-harm. Is they'll say, okay, grab a marker, and instead of a blade, trigger warning guys, sorry, instead of a blade, take a marker, and it's the same type of sensation in the back of your mind. You're feeling something on your skin. So it's awesome that you have that quote in the back of your head, and that it reflects to you in terms of your art. So that's really cool. So one question I wrote on here for you that I was curious, because I think with where you're at right now in your journey of healing and just everything in life, if you can make anything happen in the mental health community to make it better than where we're currently at, what would it be?
Help people younger.
Yes.
That's it. That is it. When I read that counselors are taken out of junior highs, I cried. And I'm just like, they're missing help. because so much suffering would not happen.
Agreed.
Or at least not at the degree that it happens, because you're teaching people younger that they have choices other than to suffer.
Yeah.
And I did not feel that forever. And that I don't mean I felt like I didn't have any choice to suffer, only because I myself and maybe the people around me were ignorant about mental health. I just didn't know there was another option. I didn't know there was another way to feel, way to think. You know, you talked about language. Speak life into children.
Yeah.
Speak, you know, when you're a teenager, your body has a lot of control over what's going on with you. But to know that you have at least some say in maybe a mental thought process about something. You know, like I still to this day have horrible test anxiety. But you know, like back then, it would have been really great if all the teachers had a stress ball, yeah, or some Play-Doh or something I could have squeezed or played with, or just to kind of keep my mind busy. That kind of little bit of help I might not have it now. And, you know, it took me, you know, find other ways to deal with it. And it's just like, I remember being in high school, which was significantly before you were. And I remember like maps on the wall and directions to the fire escape. And I remember taking my son into high school, and all these things were on the wall, like, you got this, you can do this, you know, help us around the corner. And certain classrooms were safe zones if you were getting bullied. And I'm just like, okay, this is what I'm talking about. This is an environment where it's okay, as they say, it's okay not to be okay. It was just, it's such a difference. But a lot of adults like us refer to childhood trauma because it happened in childhood. So where's the childhood help? Right. That's what I would change. That's what I would change.
I wholeheartedly agree. When when I was 14 was the first time I tried taking my life. And I remember everything after that happened. Everything fell just like dominoes. I got tackled to the ground by a resource officer. I was put in outpatient facility for it basically got Baker acted, but it was outpatient. Okay. And I remember the counselor that I ended up seeing. She was a counselor for addiction. Like she was an ex-gambling addict, and they had her as my counselor. Now, that was 2014. I couldn't imagine now how different it is. I would hope it's a lot different now, because she didn't do anything for me. It was just kind of a, oh, well, hopefully you'll feel better tomorrow kind of thing. Like, she was absolutely no help. Like, getting help when I was a kid was a joke, because like you said, the language back then, you had to be careful what you said to people, because you told somebody, oh, you know, I don't want to be alive anymore. I don't want to be here anymore. Back then, they would institutionalize you. They would shove pills down your throat. Now, when I walk into a doctor's office, and this threw me off. So when I finally got insurance through Tech Data, my current job, I booked my first doctor's appointment in probably like 10 years. And that was a mentality I had in the back of my head, because my dad had this like chirping in the back of my head saying, you know, I don't go to the doctors unless I need to. I don't go to the dentist unless I need to, kind of thing. And that was the mentality I was in when I was living in his house. You know, growing up was always like that after 18. So when I first started doing my application, my first checkup and everything, I remember on the application form, it asks you, you know, are you depressed? Do you have depression issues? Have you thought about taking your life? And, you know, I remember what I checked off, and the doctor read my answers back to me. I was taken really off guard because it wasn't like that when I was a kid. They didn't ask those questions. She asked me if I had a therapist. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to therapy now. It blew my mind because just incredible where we're at in today's society with doctors and therapy and all that stuff, because for them to go out, I don't even want to say out of their way, for them to finally realize that suicide and mental health and all that stuff is a problem that needs to be addressed is incredible. You know, I'm glad that you have the resources you have to get where you are, and vice versa for myself. So I think all of those kids should absolutely have the same resources that I have. You know, I'm not saying let's give kids shock therapy at 12 years old, but, you know, make sure that kid knows that it's okay to feel the way that they're feeling. What if you have a 10-year-old kid or an 8-year-old kid like I was, who parents just split up or had a family member pass away and they don't know how to process that? When you look up the suicide rate on age groups, kids are higher than they need to be. It should be 0%. But we're in a society where social media is so toxic and kids are so mean because those resources aren't there. So I 120% agree with you that kids should have those resources. And I'm glad that you recognize the same, because not a lot of people will speak up for kids. And it's sad. Even as parents, I don't see as any of that support. It's
like a quote I read once where it said, "Be who you needed when you were younger."
Yes. And that's something that my therapist said to me probably like 3 or 4 months ago. She's like, you're being the parent for those that you wish you had when you were growing up. And I broke out into tears because I've never heard anybody say that to me, because I'm not going to sit here and pretend like my parents were the worst people in the world. But I was mentally and emotionally tortured by both of them. And it has progressed to now. My dad's a little better than he was when I was growing up. But my mom, you know, vicious. Still to this day, absolutely vicious. And it's something that has stuck in the back of my mind. Jessica saying that to me was, you're being the parent for those who didn't, or that you wish you had when you were growing up. And it just blew my mind, because that language just immediate trigger that sent me in tears. Whew, okay. now that we've laid the groundwork on that, I'm glad we feel the same on there. Okay. So I know that you have a blog, and I'm super excited to talk about it. So are you working on anything, any current mental health projects, whether it's your art or on your blog?
Yes. So mental projects is a shorter answer, so I'll start there. I have been working, trying to find an agency in my community. I want to create a mental health rock garden, where when people come for services, if they don't leave with feeling better, a resource to need, there's still something they need on their way out. There's a positive message there. There's a resource there. There's something. And I want to create that in a type of agency where people come in needing something, and at least they would leave with something.
Right.
I am still in progress. I've been working on it for about a year. But I think that if you're brave enough to walk in, at least they'd get something out of it, even if they don't get what they needed.
Right.
I've also been dabbling in painting how I feel, not necessarily like a tree or stuff like that, but like grabbing a canvas and making creating what I feel. And I know it won't always be positive, and that's probably why I'm kind of shying away from it still. But I think it's important to give a face to what I feel. I learned a project I did once in inpatient treatment was I had to make a collage of what depression looked like. And I did it, and it took a lot of the fear about it away because I could see it. So I think if that's another way that I can grow with my mental health is if I can start seeing what I literally feel.
Yeah.
My blog. Right now, what I did was I had this need, and what I wanted to create was a place that no matter how someone was feeling, they could go to and something positive was there. So I ended up creating a website that my blog is on. And I named the website the Lucid Mind Warrior because I wanted it to symbolize that I'm still fighting to keep a clear mind about everything that I'm going through and that I've been through. And so I created it, and then I put some of my photography on it. Somebody might just need to see something. You know, I live in a place a lot of people save a lot of money to come visit and see things. So I put some things from here on there. There's a page of all resources across the nation because I don't know who's dealing with what. And obviously, I haven't been through everything. So I want to make sure people can get to where they need to get to. And then there's my blog where I start talking about my 10-year journey to healing. One, kind of like your podcast, you know, like this was an easy subject because it's September Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. So we could, you know, kind of ride with it. But I'm kind of pulling out of not knowing what's the next thing to talk about because I have a list. But I'll run across somebody, I'll read something, I'll hear something, and I'll be like, I need to talk. I've been through that triggered something. I need to write about that. So one of the things I wrote about is I called it an emotional tackle box of just the things I have around me that keep me going,
right,
keep me in a good place, can ground me, stuff like that, because it's simple things, but they keep me from going, things from going to very bad, dramatic places. And then it doesn't matter if no one else understands, I understand. And it's what works for me. And like I said, I just really hope just a piece of something I share helps somebody get through to their next day or their next moment. One of the ones I'm proudest of is called Amendment. And I talked about how the approaches to men and men seeking mental health needs to change. And conversations, again, language needs to change. Not just what's said to men, but what men are allowed to say back. So I talked to some men in my life, and I kind of did a composite of what they said and what they're dealing with and how they deal with it. And I really enjoyed that one of the answers wasn't therapy because I said, I really want to emphasize it's not for everybody. So I talk about the pivotal moment when I started getting help and I stayed in therapy, and how I really had to take a journey through my past to get to be okay in my present.
Right. And that's something that I'm really glad you brought up was the men's mental health part, because I feel like as a guy myself, I know firsthand that we're looked at like we're supposed to be the strong ones. We're supposed to bear every struggle, every argument, every, whatever it is. We're supposed to be the rock no matter what. Doesn't matter what gets thrown on us. Doesn't matter how much you stack on top of us. We're not supposed to crumble. And society has created this notion that when we crumble, we're considered weak. We're considered being sensitive is a bad thing. And excuse my language, we're looked at as a pussy. And it's something that I have been very passionate about speaking my truth of being a man, of how I've always been looked at. I've been bullied since I can remember because of how I look, because of how I carry myself, or expressing how I feel about certain things. And it's something to this day, being a 30-year-old man, I still experience that. I know who I can't talk to about certain things because they're macho men and they don't talk about their feelings. And I know there's certain people that are men that I can talk to. Like Caleb, for example. Caleb is one of my best friends. He is a brother to me. And for a while, before I really started digging into this mental health journey and, before he started coming along like he is now, it would always be try to look at it from a more positive angle. Try to look at it like this way, this way, this way. And now him and I can have those conversations like, listen, like that may work for you, but it doesn't work for me. And we'll try to talk it through now, because I don't want to say he was one of those macho guys, because he wasn't, but he grew up in a generation where the mental health conversation for guys was what I was expressing, that we can't talk about it. We can't be sensitive. And I know that was something that he just never had to experience. So fast forward to now, him and I can have conversations about everything. Because, whether it's loss, whether it's depression, whatever, he has been there for me since I left New Jersey. Well, even before that, but we became closer after I left New Jersey. But, like I said, I appreciate you being an advocate for men's mental health, because I feel it's a fight that not many people are willing to fight.
Well, what kind of sparked it was when I'm dealing with things, when I'm having a hard time, and I would talk to a man in my life, which could also include at a time I had a man therapist. But my friends or whatever would say things like, "Oh, I know that feeling." And I remember asking, why would you know that feeling? You're a guy.
Right.
How would you know that? How would you have experienced that? And then I would ask, how do you know that? And then they would start talking. And that's when, it clicked of, oh, okay. So it's not just me as a certain type of person that feels these things. It's even where I don't see it. And it was kind of a window into a light of the feeling of me walking around knowing there's more to me than people see, wasn't just me. And that I remember the first time I saw a man in my life cry, and I just literally stood there like very uncomfortable and very unsure what to do with that. And that it absolutely was not normal. And then I was, I have a child who is on the spectrum.
Right.
And isn't struggles with communication and stuff like that, but has a lot of feelings. And that's one of the ways I learned to accept, deal, and understand and learn, as we talked about, the proper language to make sure that they were being heard and that I was being heard, and that it was okay to express what you're feeling. But also the lesson I learned from dealing with him was not just that it's okay with what you're feeling, but it's okay to figure out you don't want to feel that way. So again, it's there is great value for everyone in men getting help.
Absolutely.
Whether it is not just for them, it is important for the women in their lives, the children in their lives, the other men, brothers in their lives, because everybody's watching everybody.
Absolutely.
And if you see your friend be like, you know what, I need a minute, I'm gonna step outside, you see it's okay to pause and take a minute for yourself. That's something you remember. And it's not, it's, again, we always touch on how I'm older than you. I think about sometimes, I don't know that I ever saw my male family members cry growing up. I don't think I ever did. And so I'm encouraged that conversations now happen about it.
Yeah.
I'm excited that there are over the moon that there are male advocates for mental health. I think that's the biggest way that the conversations and changes are going to happen.
Absolutely. And, that's a conversation I've had with Jessica, I think around the first time, or like the first couple sessions we had about, my mental health journey and everything. And she expressed to me, she's like, we need more men in this field. There's not enough men that are in the mental health field. And again, it goes with that stigma saying that men can't be this and men can't be that. And when people think mental health, they think it's restricted to just women. And, obviously we're coming along where it's like, okay, men have these struggles too. And we're getting a little better with conversation, but it's still nowhere near where it needs to be. Because like you said, the men that get the help for themselves benefits their children, benefits the women in their life, benefits their brothers, and so on and so forth. And I feel what could have been if my dad were to be emotionally intelligent enough to realize that calling your kids names isn't the right way to raise a kid. Of course, there's teasing and all that stuff. That's part of human nature. We tease each other, and then you go to what I experienced being bullied by my father and being called every name under the book. What could have been if he had those resources when he was younger, and now that he's turning 52, he's at a point where you're starting to see his brain is, his thinking is becoming a little more, not fragile, but a little softer. He's starting to feel things.
Okay.
And I think he's finally starting to realize, I'm like, wow, maybe I should have listened all those years, or, maybe I should have treated XYZ better. And he's at the point where his kids are all moved out of the house and he's finally starting to soften up a bit. So, I can talk to him about certain things, but I know what not to bring to him. You know what I mean? Like,
yes. But,
again,
that goes back to what we were talking about, how getting people help younger. All the men who were struggling were once boys who were struggling.
Right.
So it's like, if it's important that men make progress now and get continued support and encouragement, but we got to catch them before they're men. There's a quote, and I can't remember off the top of my head. It's from Frederick Douglass about it's easier to repair children than fix broken men. Something like that. But that always stays in my mind. Yeah.
It kind of goes with that saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks kind of thing. It kind of goes along the same lines as that. Is once somebody is stuck in their ways and stuck in the mentality that they grew up with, it's almost impossible to make them go backwards. And, some
or
people
forwards.
Some people just aren't susceptible. Yeah, there you go. That word. To advice or to be shown how to do something either more productive or a healthier way than what they've been doing. So, it's almost like speaking to a brick wall. Either you got to accept somebody for who they are. Like, being where I'm at in my life right now, I've accepted my parents for who they are. They're they've done things to me that I've, whatever, it's in the past, but I know their mistakes I will never repeat. The cycle they started, I will never continue. So it's a learning process. I feel my age group, we're still struggling with the speaking out about men and mental health stuff, but something's got to give,
I have to, that was one of the lessons I learned along the way that actually helped me make a lot of progress, was I have to remember that while I could say things about, maybe like, we'll say like a teacher who was critical of me, wish they hadn't done that or wish they hadn't made those comments. And then as I progressed in my mental health recovery, I have to remember they were in their own. And I might have just caught them at the bat. They hadn't started helping or healing yet. And it's a matter of understanding that I used to be mad that people weren't at a better level for me to deal with. And I had to accept that they're at the level they're at.
Yeah.
And it's not about, anything other than me either accepting the level they're at and working with them, or realizing the level they're at is bad for me and I gotta go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think everybody has the opportunity to grow. I don't want to say everybody grows, but everybody has the opportunity.
Yeah, I feel like that opportunity is always presented in front of somebody every day, and most choose to either ignore those signs or just be like, yeah, I should do that, but I'm more comfortable doing things this way. So, it's either a learning process or they're just stubborn and stuck in their way. So, I just feel, deal with what you can, do your best always, and move forward. It's best to move forward. So do you use your mental health knowledge and resources? Do you help them? Do you help people in your life with their struggles, like any of your peers?
So yes. However, with the disclaimer that I am not medically trained. I am I have taken the classes to become a certified chemical dependency counselor.
Okay.
But I don't give advice on stuff like that. I am the resource queen. I'll walk around and tell anybody anything. If somebody calls, I had a really bad day, and I'd be like, well, you could look this up. You could go here. I definitely I give out information over advice. And I just kind of remind people that there are people there who care. There's options other than what you're dealing with. But I put so much energy into I think the biggest way I impact other people that I've been told is what they see me do with myself.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you said options over advice. I really like that statement a lot, because I feel, and I said it in my last podcast, that when you say you're there for somebody, most people don't know what that means. Most people will be like, they're just like trained to say, I'm here for you. But when that person goes to you, it's like, oh shit, I didn't expect you to come to me. Like, I don't know what to say to you. Options statement you just said just blew my mind, because when people come to you with a struggle, they may or may not be necessarily looking for advice. They might just be looking for, like you said, resources, and being mainly the same type of person that you and I are a fiend for resources, are a fiend for helping people. And man, I'm just, my brain is like spinning with the options advice thing, because I feel that's something everybody needs to hear, because not everybody's looking for your advice.
Yes. And so like one of the things I did, so I ended up taking the whole website I did, and I actually made pages on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, because I want to reach is whoever may need it.
Absolutely.
But I'm very careful what I put on there. I'm not telling anybody what to do. I'm not saying if you're not in therapy, you're never going to be better. That's not what this is about. But the whole options over advice thing, it kind of made me think on one of I don't know which one, I think it was probably Twitter. I posted yesterday about the people who ask me how I am and wait for the answer are the ones that get the genuine response. Anybody can ask me how I'm doing. Doesn't mean you care. Doesn't mean you don't want to know so that you have something to talk about. But it's definitely important. I really, really enforce with people. I am not necessarily a professional. I'm not, stuff like that, but I can help you. And that's one of the reasons why the resource page on the website is national. It's nothing local on there, because I really want people to be able to find whatever they need for whatever. And it's just, you and I have talked about your story somewhat and my story somewhat. I would not give you advice. I wouldn't do it. I don't know your perspective. I don't know. I haven't walked in your shoes. I'm not a man. There's so many things about you that I may not understand from my own perspective. And just because we have similar stories, we find a common ground in talking about them and creating spaces for people to have opportunities and options. And that's what the page is for you, your mental health movement page. People have the option to talk. People have the option to share. People have the option, and I've seen it on there several times. I'm not looking for help. I just need to talk. Yeah. I just need to vent. But my favorite option on your page is that people can post anonymously. That's my favorite.
Facebook knocked it out of the park with that. I think it is probably the best feature I've ever seen in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's funny that you brought up mentioning that you're not a medical expert or you're not a psychologist and stuff, because that's something I had to train in the front of my brain and remind people, listen, I can help you, but I'm not going to tell you what to do. I've had people come to me who are in a crisis situation. It's okay, listen, take a deep breath. I want you to know that I'm here and everything you're feeling is valid. But I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist. If you need help, I can give you the resources. I'll even get on the phone with you. And I've done that for people. I have called a crisis hotline for somebody with them on the phone. And it's stuff like that I'm more than willing to do for people. But people also need to learn those boundaries with you. It's listen, I don't have a problem listening to the struggles at all. But there's certain people that just want to vomit, word vomit on there, and that's fine. But, if you're looking for advice or if you're looking for suggestions and people are giving them to you, and then you run back to that same exact post and just say the same exact thing, it's listen, boundaries. Either you're looking for suggestions or you're looking for attention. And I hate using the word attention. Everybody that's listening, I just want to make it clear that I'm not saying that what you're struggling with is you looking for attention. I've ran into people who will just post to post just for attention. And there are people like that in the mental health community who will not, and I repeat, will not look for resources to help them. They will constantly just word vomit in the group. And, there's nothing wrong with venting. But if there's people that are genuinely caring, hey, I want to make sure you're okay. If you need resources, I can help you find resources. But, if you're looking for medical advice, you're looking for a psychologist advice, I just want to stress that point that we are not any of those. There might be some in there that could genuinely help you. But I just feel there's that little, maybe 2% of people who will go in there and post just to post. And again, nothing wrong with venting, but boundaries. So one of the other questions that I had written on here that I thought was interesting when I wrote it down, because I know you have the blog, and I think it'd be something really cool for you. Have you ever thought about doing a guide of some sort to help others on your blog through your experiences? Say for example, said person is having an anxiety attack, and you have a guideline of what you should do to help that person with anxiety, stuff like that.
Are you asking about the person, something somebody can look up who lives with it, or a family member, how to help them?
Somebody who lives with it.
Okay. Have I thought of putting something on there? Well, what I did, I've thought about stuff like that, quick kind of go-tos, if you're feeling anxious, try this. Or if you sad, try this. I've thought about stuff like that. I want to be very careful to not be giving advice.
Of course.
Because what works for me doesn't work for everybody. But I'm trying to learn, which apparently I've learned through writing, is I don't get a lot of interaction with people. I do a lot of posting, but there's not a lot of talking back. And a lot of it could be that people want the fact that they're struggling with something kept private. They don't want to, go on with their own name and say something or ask something. So have I ever thought of kind of making a thing? Not really. I have a resource page, and I had thought about underneath of that, maybe writing things that could help. That's why I did the blog about the tackle box. So it was kind of ideas of what I use to deal and why, like what has to be going on for me to use it. And I touched on the fact that usually what grounds me or gets me better has to do with the five senses.
Yeah.
Usually something I smell or touch or see or something like that. So it hasn't really grown to that level yet. I think I've made it to 10 blogs. It's very early. I've only been doing it 2 months. And I wouldn't mind it growing. But I really felt it was almost a pressure to just make a place of positivity for people to go, and just something can change for them that might get them to the next moment.
Absolutely. And I think it's important to note when you said that you give people another place to another positive place for people to go to that are struggling. Like we talked about, I think on the phone the other day, when we were in that Suicide Prevention Rocks page. And I was supposed to do a blog with the Joshua York Foundation and put out my first blog that took like a month for him to approve. And I remember I wrote a blog for him that took me probably like 7 hours to write. Like there was just so much I wanted to put into it. Okay. So when I sent the blog to him, 3 months passed by. He didn't approve it. He didn't post it, nothing. So I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I'm the type of person that wants I want to have a platform and be able to share my story and help people because, my posts in their group was doing numbers. My first post that I made in there had over 900 likes. And whenever I decided, okay, I'm going to make my own mental health page because I want to make a difference. I want to make a difference now. I don't want to wait 3-4 months for my my blog to be out there and maybe one person seeing it because they want to hide it or whatever. So when I made that group, I remember the admin of their page removing me from their blog and basically got upset with me because I made a mental health group. My response to her was, I thought we were all in this together. What difference does it make if I have a mental health group and you have a mental health group? And I just kind of feel like those are the type of people that look into that community and see how it benefits them in some way. So it's good to see that, people like you and I can make those platforms for other people that, in a sense, people can feel heard and people find those positive places that they can visit and help themselves. So it's good to see that you did that blog. I was super happy when you made it.
Yeah, and that's an important point for people to help themselves. It's not, message me, let's get through this together. It's not, you're having a hard time, give me a call or send me a message. And it's like, it's a site of empowerment.
Yeah.
And my blog ended up with no name. So far, I had a name for it, and it just wasn't something that a lot of people received well.
Yeah.
But I've always wanted to refer to it as a kaleidoscope for 2 reasons. One is things that a kaleidoscope as a child, as a toy, is a bunch of things that are broken but are still beautiful. And I thought that was symbolic for people like us.
Yeah.
But I also learned that kaleidoscope is actually what you call a group of butterflies. And everyone dealing with things, go through a chrysalis stage. We all go through something that we get to a point, we're worn down, we get taken down by some things, lose control or whatever, and we end up going through a process and coming out of it more beautiful. So that's kind of my word. It's not the name of my blog, but it's my word.
Yeah.
And I am proud to be part of a kaleidoscope of people who, went through the fire, came out the ashes, and we went back in.
Yeah.
We went back in. And who needs help out of there? Who needs whatever? And so I'm just really proud to be part of, I've referred people to the movement, the Facebook page. The blog, the website I made, I had little cards made, like little business cards. And I've seen people, sitting on the park bench crying, and I'll just walk over, hand it to them and said, there might be something on there for you. It's not about necessarily promoting me or trying to do anything like that. It's just a matter of people need to know that there's help. When I have, sometimes I get like an extra burger or something and give it to somebody who's standing there on the streets or something. I'll be like, if you're having a hard time, look here. And it's just a matter of it's there if you need it. Yeah. And I don't even know I've never gotten a lot of feedback if it's helped people, but it does not matter because it helps me. Right. And it's there. So, yeah.
And it's important that we expand our horizons when it comes to promoting ourselves and, just getting the message out there of, mental health. When I went to Publix today, a grocery store that's down here, people, they were talking about my shirt. And I told them, I said, this is like a $40 shirt. And they're like, oh my God, $40. I said, listen, it's not a brand thing. Like, it's not because I thought this shirt was all super cool and I want to be flashy. I said, this is for suicide prevention. I said, it has the suicide prevention number on the back of it. And it goes through stages of anxiety. It says trying not to fall apart. And when people sit there and read it, it's like, listen, like, this is a message I'm passionate about. If somebody reads it, great. If not, that's fine too. But I feel it's always important to put the message out there any way you can. It's not necessarily, I want to do this because I want all these followers. I want to do this to help people.
Yes. And the other thing is, like, as you know, I have one of the movement shirts. But if no one ever speaks to me, but I purposely wear that shirt at like a big store, like a Walmart, because that's a lot more eyes to lay on it. And you're right, not for numbers, not for notoriety, but somebody who saw it knows it's there.
Yeah.
Somebody knows. And also because if I'm the one wearing it, they know that there's probably somebody, if they're having a hard time, they could ask.
Yeah.
And it'd be like, what do you need? What's up? What can I do? Here's a resource, whatever. But just being seen. And, and it's funny because I feel like if the peers who've been through it are seen, then the unseen will get there.
Absolutely. And it's so important to have your peers around you know what you stand for, because eventually they'll be the ones standing right by your side. I've had people who I haven't talked to since high school reach out to me, say, hey, I love your podcast. I love everything that you're doing. I haven't talked to this person in 12 years. And I got a message from someone. It's crazy.
Nice.
Like I said, getting the message out there means more to me than how many followers I have. So I have the final question for you for the night. What does your art process usually look like? Do you do them on your free time, or do you have friends that you send them out
to? All art happens at night because that's when Tina can't sleep. I tried to do an art class once at like 2 p.m. and I was blank.
Yeah.
I was blank. And it's probably because all of the stuff from the day hadn't hit me yet. So to the end of the day, when everything slows down, the feelings come up and I'm like, oh, gotta get rid of that. So that's kind of how the art press is. Just I lay rocks in front of me, paint brushes, paint pens, and I'm just like, what do I feel? What do I need to get out there? My art has now been around the world, which blows my mind. I have people who live in parts of the country who will ask me, send me some rocks, art, and I'll ask them, do you want art or do you want motivational? They're like, I don't care, send me both. And then they'll hide them for me because they believe that it's important. Um, another reason why I mentioned like the rock garden here, I want it where it can be reached. The art community, the rock art community in my state is huge. One of the pages has like 15,000 members.
Wow.
Of people just, finding them doing whatever. But a lot of the times some of the artists will say, I'm taking a trip, who wants me to go hide rocks where they are. So I'll share a story with you where I had a rock that I did nothing but pour it.
Right.
Put a little glitter in it. It was pretty, whatever. Left it in a campground because I'm living a tourist state. So I'm big in the summer because I really want my rocks to travel. Never heard about it, wasn't worried about it. A couple months later, this guy posted, oh, by the way, found this rock when I was there, forgot to say something. So that was probably 2 years ago.
What?
He lives in an RV and my rock has been through the country.
I love it.
They sit it on the dashboard. And then he was like, you can send me rocks and I'll hide them where I go. So my favorite from him was I had a rock placed in front of the Old Faithful. And it was just a butterfly. And it was just like so amazing. I was fishing and a lady came up and was like, can I have one of your, can I buy a fish off you? And in Alaska, that's illegal. And I was like, no, but I can gift you one. She goes, you do that? And she's like, I feel really bad. It's my, my culture that you don't take something without giving back. And I was like, well, my culture is you give before you get. So I don't really know what we're going to do here. So she was like, I'm staying in town. Can I meet you for coffee tomorrow? I said, sure, no problem. So we met up and she brought me candy and all this other stuff. I took her all this art. And she was sitting there in awe. And this is a lady I'd not met more than a day before. And she was like, you really need to keep doing this. This is beautiful. This is inspiring. And so I gave her some art to take back. One of the rocks I made her just very, just simple stuff. But I gave her a rock from another artist as well. One of the rocks said, be kind. My motto, okay? If you can say something bad, you could have said something nice, okay? It ended up in the Ukraine when the war happened. What? And he sent me this picture of it sitting on a ledge and knowing what was going on there and that my words of be kind in a beautiful way were there. I bawled. I cried.
Do you have a picture of that?
Huh?
You have a picture of that?
Oh, that's on my page. Oh yeah.
You got to send that to me after this podcast.
Okay.
That is incredible.
Yes. I had one I left at a sign that says welcome to Anchorage.
Yeah.
And some lady posted, it was a bird. And some lady posted holding it in front of a ship she was about to get on in Norway. So she's like, the bird's gonna travel. And I was like, sweet. So it's amazing to me. I call them my rock angels, the people who take my art and it goes other places.
Yeah.
And I know I haven't hit all 50 states. There's some places where, but I will talk, I used to not be like you're talking about, I've changed. I used to not talk to people. But if I see somebody that looks like a tourist, I will hand them a rock. I'm like, here, a piece of Alaska from an Alaskan. And they're like, oh my God. And so, and then I leave my art just around everywhere because again, somebody might just need to see something beautiful. So it's what I do. I
am like speechless with the Norway and Ukraine story. That's phenomenal.
Uh-huh.
My God. See, I told you, you're phenomenal. You're incredible. I love it.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful to have met you. I swear to God, inspirational. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing those stories with us. That's great.
You're welcome.
So at the end of every podcast, I usually read a quote at the end, but I'm going to do things a little differently since it's Suicide Prevention Month. I just want to remind all my listeners, the 988 number is available and has been highly successful. You can text it if you don't feel comfortable calling. It's similar to the crisis hotline, just maybe a little different in terms of, what your needs may be. So again, that's 988 if you guys are feeling in need. I just want to stress this message every podcast. It's okay to not be okay. It's okay to feel what you're feeling. Just know that you don't have to fight through any of this alone. And I just want to give another special thank you to you, Tina, for being part of this podcast. It has meant the entire world to me. Where can people find you on social media? It doesn't have to be your personal, maybe your blog.
Oh, well, the Lucid Mind Warrior is the website that's got everything on there. It has links to that under that name. It's on Twitter, it's on Instagram, and it's on Facebook. And then the website's the best place to go because links to all of it is in there. So if you can just remember the name, lucidmindwarrior.com is the website, you'll find everything else on there.
And I'll get that link for you to post it in the podcast description for everybody too.
Thank you. Yeah, that's all where they find the art. Even my rocks are on there.
Perfect.
But you said you closed out, how you closed out saying, about the resources.
Yeah.
If I could give a closing thought.
Absolutely.
The closing thought I guess I would leave with is this. It's not just that there's help. You have a right not to live suffering.
Absolutely.
One of the quotes I heard that's had the most impact on me was from Mel Robbins. And she said that happiness is your birthright.
Yes.
You have a right to be happy.
I love it.
It just because it could be years, decades of trauma and negativity, that you have a right to not live the way you're living. You have a right. And now you have people to help you live the better way. So.
Well, thank you again so much, Tina. Hopefully I'll have you on here again soon. For all my listeners, remember, you'll catch this episode on Tuesday of, what is that date? That is the 6th of 2022, of course. Thank you guys again for listening. Be well. And of course, as always, be gentle with yourselves. Thank you so much for listening. Take care, guys.